Hello and welcome to this edition of Crossover. I'm Ji Xiaoxun with Aventurina and Julian.
Oh, you said her name right.
Yes! Absolutely. A difficult task. And we have a new friend.
Yes. Hi guys. Hello everyone.
How long have you been living in China?
I've been in China for about I moved here about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I've been here for about
so
2
what do you do?
Well, I could say
apart from being in Crossover.
Aside from my new job now.
Right. She's part of she's one of ours.
Yeah.
I'm part of the force, right?
You're part of the industry, the business.
Yeah. So I'm sometimes Julian's been at this longer than me, but sometimes I host shows and sometimes I sing on TV and I write songs.
And I know you speak perfect Chinese, even better than mine.
No.
Anyway, this is going to be a new task, new challenge to you. I'm being in a new show. No.
My new task is speaking English. Okay.
And just to show you how popular this show is,
okay.
We're going to share with you some of the feedbacks we received from the world over, from all these viewers.
So to show her how popular the show is, you're going to read only the good ones, right?
So you're safe. Feel safe and feel relaxed.
I've heard there's some really good feedback about Julian.
Oh, yes.
So I want to hear that.
It may be off the show.
Okay.
That's why she came on the show. If you heard that.
All right. We had one episode about how 1 yuan could be powerful and valuable in some cases. And this is the email from Loredano Grandi. And he said, "Good evening, dear friend. The topic is very important, especially now, seeing what's happening in China and Pakistan. We must pay more attention to teach new generations in value of money."
Mm-hmm. I remember that when we talked about how Newsweek was bought for $1 with Charlotte.
And how college students in Zhejiang were given only 1 yuan for each day and they had to survive for 20 days.
Wow.
Interesting stories. Yes, watch Crossover and you'll get the details of those stories. This email is from Dorian from Los Angeles and love the show. I have a Korean girlfriend and sometimes we find ourselves in problems because of cultural differences. Would love to see an episode on the stigmas of interracial dating in China and abroad.
That would be really interesting.
You would be an expert in this, huh?
Why?
Why?
You tell me why.
You're thinking that I had tons of different...
No, I didn't say that.
I know that's what...
Wait, he's starting to tell us the truth now.
No.
Yeah. Anyway, that is possible. I mean, we may have an episode about interracial dating or international marriages, and should be interesting. If you give us your stories, we might actually share your stories with our viewers the world over. Anyway, keep writing to us. Just tell us where you're from, where you're watching, and what would be the topics you might be interested in. And move on to today's topic. Not that... entertaining, not that amusing at all. It's about catastrophes, disasters. But we are going to start with actually a film, a movie. It's called Aftershock. It's a Chinese-made blockbuster. Let's just take a look at some of the clips of this film. So those are the clips from this movie Aftershock, and it was a real earthquake happened in 1976. Tangshan is a city in the north of the country, not so far from Beijing. It's about 2 hours drive.
Yeah, 2 hours drive.
About 2 hours drive from Beijing. And the film actually is doing quite good, and the total revenue, box office revenue, is about 650 million yuan. So that's nearly 100 million US dollars.
It's a memory that is very vivid for a lot of Chinese people I know, especially even in Beijing back then. Well, you were not in Beijing back then.
In Beijing.
But quite a few people I know who were in Beijing actually felt the quake
Wow.
200 kilometers away here in Beijing. They could feel, you know, even, I think it was during the night, they felt, because somebody told me that he was sleeping and felt the quake, so it was huge.
It happened on the 28th of July. It was 3:42.
In the middle of night.
Yeah,
In the middle of
1976.
night. And it's a very, very timely movie because of what's happened in Shenzhen and like a lot of other places in Qinghai and everything in China. So I think it's a good way to have all the Chinese people come together around this feeling and make them understand what it might have been like to live through that.
Again, I mean, this is a controversial movie these days because there are quite some arguments about this movie, whether a movie like this should be produced at all in the first place,
Sure.
and whether it's the right way to remember such a huge tragedy, a catastrophe.
That's logical to think that way. There will obviously be people who are not, you know, who don't fancy the idea, because it's not like a lot of the catastrophe movies, such as, you know, there are lots of those in Hollywood, but those are fiction. It's pure fiction, and when it's you know, in people in history, when it's close to us, it's always very painful. The same kind of catastrophes, if it happened, say, 3,000 years ago, we don't feel the same way. But when you still have people who are suffering from that, could be it could be anything. It could be the loss of a son. It could be a lot of things. It's tough to, you know, to make a kind of box office movie after that. I'm sure the intention is very good.
Well, it's a bit of the same controversy they had about the movie Oliver Stone made about 9/11.
Yeah.
Like when is too soon, or when is it a good time to make a movie about an event that's hurt so many people? So
yeah, but this movie is actually not a replay of what happened during the earthquake and how many people were killed. Basically, it was a story that happened to a family,
it's a family.
reunion of the family, how big the influence had become to those families, especially psychologically.
I think for me, I think I think some people don't think it's a good idea to produce a movie, but I think it was such a great idea because I think for me as a foreigner living in China, living in Beijing, I mean, you ask yourselves, why does this happen in Qinghai, or why does this happen in Sichuan? And I just felt like I had no way of participating or really understanding, especially as a foreigner. I felt so out of it. And I watched this movie, and I think it made me feel a little closer to the people who went through that. So I thought that was incredibly helpful for me.
Aftershock is not the only movie reflecting what really happened in our history. Titanic is another
that's
example,
true.
extremely successful. And we've got some clips to show you.
Oh, okay.
Haul away!
The water is freezing and there aren't enough boats. People are going to die.
For God's sake, the women and children down here! Let us out so we can have a chance! Where is he going? Together!
And God shall wipe away all the tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death.
God almighty.
Watching this makes me think it's too close to us for the Tangshan earthquake. So they couldn't make that movie like Titanic.
No.
Titanic was
Nearly a
80
century
years,
ago.
nearly a century away
true.
from us. So they can do the movie a little bit the Hollywood way. You know,
that's true.
they can make heroes. They can make
Love
they can
stories.
no, they can have a lot of things. They can
That's
have a
true.
big climax on the movie. They can have all those things that make a good Hollywood movie. Whereas when it's close to us, you have to kind of stay closer to the reality, but you still want to have a story, but you're still a little stuck between a documentary and
That's true, because in the Tangshan Dadizhen, I watched it, and a lot of the most emotional parts, like there's a part where the family is separated, and for people who want to watch the movie, don't watch this part, because I'm going to say something about the story. But in the family separated, and then they reunite, and they didn't film the part, like in Hollywood movie, you would be like, April, Jack, you know, and they didn't film that part. they just cut that out and they filmed right after it when everybody was fine with each other.
Yeah, I mean, it's wise for the director to choose not to actually repeat what has already happened in history. It's not about, you know, how these buildings fall apart and how people were killed. It was really about the psychological influence of this earthquake and you know, how people recovered from those earthquakes. And it's not just so far away from us. Tangshan earthquake and the one happened in Wenchuan in Sichuan province, and also there's another one in Qinghai.
Yeah.
And that was Aftershock, a movie about the earthquake that happened in 1976 in Tangshan in North China. And when we come back after a short break, we're going to talk about a much more recent earthquake that happened in New Zealand. And welcome back to Crossover, another earthquake that happened, well, much more recent in New Zealand. But you know, obviously, we all knew that it didn't cause that much damage, like we expected. Actually, we would thought.
Well, they have one thing that I remember, and I'm not sure what exactly it is, but I heard that they had a lot of wooden buildings in New Zealand.
Structure of those
light wooden
But
buildings.
lighter structures. Apparently, they got the experience from a huge earthquake. It was 8 point something in the 19th century. I think it was 1855 when I think a palace or something, a wooden palace, actually stayed pretty much intact or something. And they were saying that wooden structures, of course, it has to be of good quality and well reinforced, but wood has some kind of how do you say, ductile or flexible quality to it? That
It absorbs shocks?
It kind of absorbs shocks, yes. Apparently it's better than a lot of the simplest concrete buildings.
This was the earthquake that happened in Christchurch. It's about 300 kilometers away from the capital, Wellington. And it's 7.1 degree earthquake. And not many people died from this earthquake.
New Zealand is a place where earthquakes happen really often. Really often. I think they have.
The two plates colliding.
Yeah, they're on the plates colliding, and I think they have over 100 earthquakes every year that are like palpable. 100 earthquakes. That's a lot of earthquakes. So they've taken these measures. That we've talked about.
It is important for people to know what to do when something like this happens. I mean, if you are asked the question, when an earthquake happens, what do you do? Where do you go?
I have no idea.
I think you have. Okay, I'm gonna sound really, but I think it's you have to find a stronger wall in the construction, and you have to find where 2 walls intersect.
Okay.
Because there's a triangle, right? And a triangle's a really strong point. So if
What about I go under the table?
I think they say that you have to do that in Japan, right? They have all the students go under the table and stay there.
Yeah, it really depends on how strong the table is.
I don't dare say anything because in France we don't have any education about that.
That's true.
Obviously, in New Zealand, Japan, California, those places have a lot of. I mean, they have had a lot of earthquake in the past.
I mean, it's not only about earthquake. What about in fire?
I know something about fires. Do not take the elevator.
Okay. Just go back to these preventive measures being taken by these governments. And actually, it's been taken by the governments in China to educate the primary school students or secondary school students, just to educate them to know what to do when something like this happens. We're going to show you some pictures.
This is in case of a fire?
I don't know. No, this is earthquakes,
I don't think
right?
it's about fire. It's about earthquake.
Earthquake, okay.
Okay.
Playground.
So
if they have time.
Get out of the building, yeah. And then protect the head. Yeah, so that's the picture of them
it's
getting out.
It's a rehearsal of coming out of these buildings. Evacuation. Coming down through the rope.
It's a slightly different thing to teach when you teach children or at school and when you teach adults. And there's one thing you can think of, which is, you know, we've seen during the Wenchuan earthquake, we've seen that little hero, Lin something, I don't remember his name, but he saved quite a few other
a
children.
young
child.
Okay.
But this is the last thing you would advise a child to do in those cases, to go and save other people, because most of the children would end up not saving them others and sacrificing
also hurting
themselves. So what we teach children usually is to protect themselves first of all, and don't think about others. But as an adult, I would be interested in knowing, you never know what you're going to do, how you're going to react, if you will have the opportunity, but sometimes to have the slightest knowledge. The way I was swimming a lot when I was a child, and we actually we spent a lot of time learning how to save people in the water.
Oh, with the plastic thing that was really heavy and that you could never pull up?
Exactly.
Yeah, I did that also.
Thing. So those things, I think, are very interested also for children to learn. So those are two things. Learn how to protect yourself, and also learn what you were saying, the little really scientific knowledge that we need.
Yeah, but the principle is always like, you have to make sure you're safe before you want to save others.
That's true.
Sure.
Yeah.
The Wenchuan earthquake happened on the 12th of May, and now the country has designated this day as the National Day for Disaster Prevention and Mitigation. May the 12th.
May the 12th, yes.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, when all these students in the whole country receive special education and training that day.
Have to learn about all this.
Yeah.
I think it's a very clever thing to do, because people remember, and it's not as if, the same kind of prevention exercise you would do, or a few hours of teaching you would do in a common day would not be, for children especially, would not feel that important. And even for adults, I have a job, I don't want to. But when you have actually a memory of something that happened on that day, you kind of feel the necessity to do it. And I think it's a very good thing for the future.
Disasters like earthquakes or mudslides are not only happening in China. It seems the whole world is going crazy. And that's why people are saying, what's going to happen to this world? What's going to happen to us?
2012.
To the Earth? Is there going to be a real 2012 big tragedy for the whole world? We'll see. And we're going to take a short break. And welcome back to Crossover. I know everyone is talking about the end of the Earth, and we've seen movies like 2012 or The Day After Tomorrow, and some say that's going to happen not soon from today. And we are just going to show you some of the clips of these movies, and we'll see whether scenes like that in these movies would happen one day in the future.
Has to start making long-term preparations now.
Jack, all you have is a theory.
It's been raining like this for 3 days now.
$2012. Do you believe that?
You really want to talk about that?
Yeah.
I don't believe it.
This.
I don't believe a single second of no.
Why?
And even the Maya civilization, they don't believe it.
That's true.
It's like, because it's a whole Western European concept. Well, we will include the U.S. in that form of culture.
According to this forecast, on the 22nd of December 2012.
Okay.
That's going to be the end of the Earth. You do believe that?
No, I don't.
You don't?
I just want to talk about the Maya, because I spent time on Wikipedia yesterday, researching all this. And actually, why do they believe that the 21st of December 2012 is the end of the world? It's because the Maya calendar is organized in Baktuns, and 13 Baktuns is according to a very old version of the Mayan calendar that almost no Mayan believes at all. The 21st of December is going to be the end of that cycle. But in fact, most Mayans use a calendar that's organized around 20 Bactuns, which would make it like, I don't know, in 4,000 or 5,000 after Christ.
That's the whole point. It's like taking any weird idea from the 3,000 years ago in China that no Chinese people are known, culture of the ancient China is known of. And Westerners suddenly find this and say, "Oh, the Chinese said that."
This is so cool. Yes, we have to make it into a Hollywood movie.
I mean, we've got so many different versions of the end of the world stories, like the one in 1999 or the one in 2000 and 2002. No one.
Oh, there was one in 2002?
Well, according to...
Man, these things happen often.
No, there have been many predictions. The only reason why 2012 is such a big topic is because there was a movie.
That's true.
We have to come back to this topic again, not because of the calendar or that forecast,
but because what's everything that's happening.
Exactly. How do you explain, say, the sinkholes, those big tin cans of the sinkholes?
I don't know.
We are going to see some pictures, and you can't really explain. This is a huge sinkhole in Guatemala, and not far from the capital. It's in the north of the capital. It's 60 meters deep, 30 meters in diameter.
How did it appear?
Yeah, what happened?
No one knows, and that's why people are referring that to 2012, the end of the world.
I would believe that it's some kind of military action or some mistake or whatever, missile,
And that's not the only sinkhole that we have in this world.
Wait, they have no documentation about when this
Not yet. It only happened in this year.
Wait, so they don't
2010.
They don't know how it happened. It just appeared. It just appeared one day.
No explanations. Yeah.
My theory is that there are so many strange things in this world. When you watch, actually, there have been documentaries. Every year they do documentaries and reports about all the very strange, unexplainable things. There have been tons of so-called documentations about the UFOs and everything. I mean, to this day, we have yet to see anything that we could share with people.
I'm still wrapping my head around this. So in Guatemala, one day there wasn't a sinkhole, and then the next morning people woke up and there's a sinkhole.
We don't know what's happened. What's the reason behind all these big sinkholes? But what about the comments from Professor Stephen Hawking?
Oh, I know about those.
What did he say?
And he said, "I believe that the long-term future of the human race must be in space. It would be difficult enough to avoid disaster on planet Earth in the next 100 years. If humans can survive the next 200 years and learn to live in space, then our future will be bright." In other words, if you don't know how to live in space, if you can't find a replacement of the Earth in space, it will be a big problem.
Does he explain why he says these things?
No.
It's quite clear why he says that, because he talked about the Cuban Missile Crisis in '62, I think.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of those things. Now we have, the reason why he's saying that now is that we have the ability to destroy the world. We have the ability to destroy
And he's not talking about these
nuclear
nuclear weapons.
No, but it's included in the whole theory, because humans now have the ability and are progressively kind of destroying the environment
and changing the way,
and changing the whole thing.
Function,
I mean, there are even some doubters in the past have agreed recently that we need to do something. We need to protect a lot of things. So, not talking about nuclear weapons and everything, we can talk about only what we're doing to the environment that will modify so many things. Think of the sea level going up. This affects so much stuff. This affects earthquakes. This affects the winds. This affects. So we have all kinds of catastrophes coming from the whole thing. So actually, the whole thing is about the human race, because I remember the BBC documentary called Earth. At the end, they were saying, what we're trying to protect is not the Earth. We always say, oh, save the Earth, save the planet. The planet has survived the biggest meteor impact ever that killed everything but some kind of underground rats.
Cockroaches,
and I don't know, some kind of cockroaches or insects. And what happened is that it kind of made it improve. when it was reborn, humans appeared. You had it's about saving. It's not about saving the planet Earth. It's that people think of saving the human race.
That's true.
Which is something different.
That is very true.
So
it's basically, well, I don't know. I mean, again, it's saying that we're saving the, but it's a selfish thing. We have to save ourselves.
When we talk about the end of the world, or we are not talking about 2012. I mean, it has nothing to do with that, but does have something to do. Have a lot to do with what we do
with other
as human race.
Well, with other predictions. Well, not only what we do, but I mean, there. For example, in 2012, the movie, there's the scene we saw actually is a scene with the solar blast. Like the sun is supposed to have these blasts in space. But there's been I read again online that there's been predictions about these happening more frequently or bigger. With more magnitude in 2012, but that they wouldn't really influence much on the actual planet Earth. They'd probably maybe have some change with satellites, but it wouldn't again influence much about the population.
But obviously human activities have huge influences on what's happening on this Earth, and I guess it is important for us to control ourselves a little bit.
One thing I think of when I see those movies is that human life is like this, and I am like nothing. I mean,
that's true.
We could. I mean, you never know, but we appeared like this on Earth, and someday maybe we're going to disappear. I don't think it would be such a strange thing. That the problem is when.